Question 2. Question 2 is quite a fun one because it requires you to iterate the whole thing and then after that look for letters. And then after that you're kind of supposed to output a string that, you know, only contain letters. There's a few conditions. So going through the condition, we know that it only look for the letters of the input string. Doesn't matter uppercase or lowercase, as you can see from example 1, you keep both uppercase and lowercase. Now, in another thing to note also is that you will see that they say that you want to have a single space separating each set of letters. So if you look at example 2, we will see that EI is a set of letters. And then after that, we see that the next chunk of letters is OIDZ. And between them is a dot. So in this case, meaning that this is a non-letter. So you don't just look for only space, then you start separating them. Is any continuous chunk of letters, you will separate with the next continuous chunk with a space. There's also no space at the start. There's also no space at the end. And that's the gist of the question. Now, for us to approach this question, the solution is really just iterate every single character and look for what is a letter. Now, you can write a function to check for you whether something is alpha by doing more than or equal to a double n c less than or equal to z or c more than or equal to capital A and c less than or equal to capital Z. You can do this. This is one way, but as all good curious student, I believe this was also kind of gone through in one of the I's, that there's a method called isAlpha as well, which you can import from ctype.h. So this do the exact same thing, check for you whether something is an alphabet. Now, with this useful thing, we first want to look for telltale sign. What should we return? Usually free tells you something about you need to malloc. So I'm going to start off saying that my result is going to be something malloc. I'm going to malloc something, and the size of it, I need to come up with a predetermined size. How much memory do I want to allocate? And usually you think about what's the worst case scenario. In this case, the worst case scenario is every single character in the string is a letter lah. So if that's the case, then I just need to do a stir length. Of course, I need to include string.h. Including the stir length here, that's going to give me the length of the string. And of course, for every string, I always need to have a terminating character. So if that's the case, I need to do a +1. And let me include stdlib.h as well. Now, just in case you might forget to return, so put the return statement at the start. Okay, so first thing first, we don't know what is the length, so eventually we might have to adjust the length accordingly. So if that's the case, we will declare the length that we want to find for the string. So after finding only all the letters, we need to know what is the eventual length. So we'll have that. And then after that, in all form of traversal for string, always try to stick to traversing the pointer. The reason is because this is just much easier for you and much safer. But of course, you can always play with get the stir length and then do a for loop. There's no issue as well. But my personal preference here is just traverse up to the null character. Now this generally is a bit more recommended because things like your stir length and all these things built in, they all use the same way to check for the full string. Now, finally, we just need to iterate through all the characters and look for an alpha character, right? So using the built-in function is alpha, I can just pass in %stir. That is going to help me to find out whether this is an alphabet. So knowing that this is an alphabet, stir is an alphabet. Now from here, then I can just put into the result. Result equal to %stir. Okay. And then after that, since I have added one item into result using length as the reference, I can do a length plus plus afterwards. This actually also helped me to keep track of the length and keep track of where is the next position to put things. Finally, in the case that is not an alpha, there are a few cases I want to handle. I want to be able to handle whether the previous character, I want to be able to handle whether this character is, I need to sort a space inside here. So I could potentially need to put a space here. But the way that I tell whether I want to put a space here is whether the previous character is an alphabet. So how can I keep track of that? Only if the previous character is an alphabet. So we can do that with a Boolean value saying that is previous char alpha. Now since we start off at the start of the string before we iterate, there's no character before that, so is previous char alpha is going to be false at the start. So since we find 1 in the if loop, in the if branch, then in the else branch, we can say that, okay, if the previous char is an alpha, then here is where I'm going to do a logic where I say result of length is equal to space. I'm going to add a space here, and then after I'm going to do length plus plus. So then this will help me to add the space separating the previous chunk of alpha with the next chunk. And of course, since I've added this, I need to set this back to true, false. So then after that, I won't add 2 spaces in a row. If I don't set this back to false, the next one is still going to be true. Even though it's not an alpha, then add another space. Now, then afterwards, since we are using a stir pointer, every single time, doesn't matter whether you have all this logic or not, to traverse the string, you must always do a stir plus plus. Okay? So don't forget about that. And then finally, this should roughly already sum up what you need to have, except for a few things. Now, let me give an example string. If I have a string that looks like hello world, this code is fine. But if this string looks like this, hello world with a space, or anything that's not an alphabet,
there will be a blank at the back.
Yes, there will be extra space at the back because I'll go into the else branch after the D, letter D. So just got to handle one extra case over here. I just need to check if length is more than 0, meaning that there's actually something inside. And then I want to check, I want to check whether result of length minus 1 is actually equal to a space. And if it's a space, length minus minus. I just move it back once. And with that, that kind of gives me the idea of how long is the thing. And what I can do is, every time when you have a specific length of string, you set whatever at the length pointer to a null character to terminate the total string. You can stop here, or you can be a very responsible engineer and say that I'm going to reallocate the string. You can reallocate the string with just the exact number of characters that you want. So you do a size of char multiplied by, I believe, length plus 1. Length of the string plus 1 with the null terminator. So you can do the reallocate, or you can do without the reallocate. There's no big difference here. You don't get penalized if you don't do the reallocation. So it's a good to have, but it's also you can don't have it. Okay. And then we can run that. Ta-da! That should work very nicely. Okay,